Kristiāns Treijs came from a different world, the past century Latvia. When you talk to him, you get the feeling that he has survived the menacing fog of history to share with you some maybe only apparently conservative views that in the end always get to haunt those frivolous progressive minds, who get to chase an idea like an hound in the middle of the night. Mr. Treijs seemed to have lived many lives in one, and yet he shares his views with a disarming lack of arrogance. I have thought about our conversation more and more since it happened, and I can only be grateful for it.
Okay, Kristiāns, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Yourself, Fabri?
Not bad, not bad. I think we saw each other probably last year with a great night together.
Oh yes, it was amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we had a great night in a great evening. I think it was Tallinnas Kvartals, and we were playing Novus together. And I moved to your country of origin, so I moved there 3 years ago. And you were visiting from a long stay in England, which is still up to now. You are residing in England, in London, but you were born in Latvia. You grew up in Latvia up to a point. How did it feel, first of all, to come back?
It felt rather weird. I was trying to oppress my emotions because I had a agenda of things to do, so I tried to keep it practical. But it was weird, especially after the long COVID. I haven't been to Latvia for over 2 years. I had to cancel like 2 holidays. I missed my daughter's graduation and I missed her birthday, so it was not great. So it felt great and sad at the same time. And you can see the life has moved on in Riga, in Latvia, and you are not part of it, and the city has changed. I barely recognize the city. I recognize the buildings, but atmosphere, everything has changed. So yeah, I have to say I felt like a tourist.
That makes me believe that the last time that you had visited before last year must have been a long time before. When was the second to the last time that you visited Latvia?
2 years before pandemic began. So that was another era of our times, yeah. Because these days you can't say before pandemic and post pandemic. So that was before pandemic, yeah. So it will be 2 years more.
Mm-hmm. And you saw a different place.
The vibe is very different. I have to say that's lots of art on the streets, lots of cafes, especially because of those rules that unvaccinated people can dine only outside, which was quite funny. And then so well, I'm vaccinated, but because we had UK COVID passes which were not recognized in the European Union, so even if we double vaccinated, we couldn't eat in the restaurants. So we had to explore the outside spaces. And I really like the way the Riga has changed, and people seem, maybe it's because of time distance, but they seem a lot nicer than they used to be, as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were born in exactly where?
In Riga, not far from where you live. It used to be the 6th hospital, so you're not gonna know it, but it's gone. I was born in Riga. So I spent my childhood 8-9 years in Riga. Then we moved to the countryside for many stupid reasons. So I spent another 8-9 years till the age of 19 in countryside, and I moved back to Riga again to study.
Whereabouts in the countryside you moved?
Do you know Jaunpils?
Of course.
Yeah, so it's nearby. So it's a small village. It's called Strutele. If you know Kristiāns Barons.
Of course.
I was living for a certain 4 years in the house where he was born.
What?
Lake outside the house that he was born in that building, in that very building.
So Stretele, close to Jaunpils, and then for 8 years, around 8 years in the countryside, and then back to Riga.
Exactly, yes. I had that split experience as a as a child, I was city boy. Then I then I spent to give you an idea, we moved there in the early 90s, which was a horrific time. And I think for the first year we didn't have the electricity, so I was doing my homeworks in the candlelight. And because initially we lived in a converted cow shed from the 19th century. So we literally built some stuff in a cow shed, and that's where we were living. So on one side we lived, on the other side there were cows, pigs. So literally no electricity, no water. Every morning you have to wake up 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the well to get the water for yourself. And then sometimes it was so cold you had to break the ice in a bucket to get to the water. So
getting the water warmed up with a stove and
yes. It was a massive culture shock. I was like 9 years old, I think, when we moved to the countryside. So imagine yourself as a little boy, you grow up with bohemians, you go to theaters, concerts, opera, and then all of a sudden you are thrown into countryside. It was very brutal. So yeah.
And also away from your original friends from the city, no?
Exactly, yeah. So I was going to Riga's French lycée, so you can imagine the change was very brutal.
The new acquaintances at the countryside, do you remember, did they compensate for the shock a bit, like the kids around, or you have good memories of playing around? Did you appreciate nature in those days?
The nature, that was my savior, nature and the books, because I didn't really made any friends in the country, on the countryside, because I was so different. So I was completely different background. So the books was my escape, and the nature. And because it's so forestry, so many forests, so I sometimes spend the days just in forest alone. So I have to admit, I felt very lonely there in the countryside, because all the other boys, they were so different. They were like into fixing tractors and going hunting, which we did as well, but it was never my thing. So yeah, I remember once my stepdad threatened to burn all my books. So that's when I took the axe. I was standing in front of bookshelf crying, and I said, "You will not burn my books."
Look, with my different experience, I can understand, despite you were very young in Riga, the different atmosphere. You need the different stimulus from people, and you find the only satisfaction you find it in books and nature. You said,
yeah, that will stay with me forever. Like I always miss being out on the countryside and going for long walks, and yeah, that's what all in all. Well, it was a very, very interesting and fruitful experience, but it came at a price. Yeah, I don't regret living on the countryside, but because it gave me like how to say it, a proper backbone, where you learn to work hard and just keep on going irrespective of anything, because you just have to, you don't have a choice. So yeah, it was all in all, it was experience worth having.
but so going back to Riga after that might have been some sort of relief, no?
It was, yeah. I got pretty much immediately married. So yeah, the teen year, the university years, they were good fun. That was I think the university probably was the best experience in my life, because, well, the professors I get to interact with, like these days when most things are online on the Zoom, I feel sorry for those modern day students, because they don't get that direct interaction with the professors. And the most interesting conversations that I had with my professors were after the lectures, when we just sitting in the toilet smoking and talking. So yeah. So university years, they were great, a bit difficult, but yeah.
I'm teaching something that is very basic to communicate, but personally I do miss the times where I used to go to the offices or whatever, to the classes to teach in person, because there was a different flow of energy. And now it feels that the energy is going to the screen and is bouncing back to me somehow.
Exactly. Yes.
But they being able to stand up and move in the class and involve and move your hands and have a live perception of people, it feels like the energy actually gets dispersed in the room, Whereas now in the room, it feels like, look, I'm not accustomed to sit down for this long.
Exactly.
And I feel like almost like I'm imploding. I don't know. After 7 classes in a day or 6, I feel like I'm exhausted because I feel like I've been pushed in a small corner to do something that takes energy, and it has to be consumed. It has to be. It's weird. You're right.
Listen, we are social animals. We need human interaction. We are not a lonely animals, so we live in packs. We need that interaction, direct interaction with each other. Like this is the virtual world. At the end of the day, it's still not real. We need that human touch, and especially with the corona, it's so weird. We are avoiding the handshakes, which is unnatural, isn't it?
You know what I noticed as well in myself recently, that lately I was out maybe in a situation, in a social I don't know, circumstance with people, and I realized that I'm becoming kind of goofy around people. I'm not accustomed to. I haven't been around people apart from the same people that are in the house or whatever. I haven't been in those situations for a while, so I look like almost not accustomed to it anymore, and a bit. I feel weird. I feel awkward. It seems we are all the same nationality at the end of the day, but on one hand, you want to be able to communicate, maybe more if you're Italian. I'll give you that, absolutely. But at the same time, if it's a muscle that.
Yeah.
So if you don't flex it enough time, you might notice the difference in your attitude. It's exciting. I'll give you that, because going out and being in a social situation after so long, it feels almost adrenalinic. Almost.
Yeah, you get anxiety before socializing.
Very, like, even going out for a coffee now looks like a jubilee. It looks like a big event. Once you return to Riga, you would have met your future. How can I say your
Wife.
future? Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, we had a daughter at a very young age. So I spent most of the time studying and working at the same time. So it was pretty intense, and yeah, so I dropped out of university for many reasons. It was just too hard to work and study at the same time. So my ex-wife, she managed to pull through, and then I went back to university. I finished my studies, and then 2008 COVID the credit crash came. So, back in the days, everyone was talking about Greece, how badly Greece was affected. I can tell you, the Latvia, it was a lot more affected. The only difference is the Greeks, being Greeks, they were shouting and threatening not to pay. So we just sucked it up and paid everything. And so, yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible back in the days. I was about to get a good job in an advertising company, and I felt like finally my life is sorted, so I'll have a good job, diploma, I'll get out of restaurants and won't have to work in restaurants. But there you go. Yeah. As you say, humans make plans, but the gods are laughing at them.
Yes. No, I do remember that time around the crisis. Well, not really. I don't remember anything. I wasn't around Latvia. I was in Italy at the time, but I remember I would have come around Latvia probably for a wedding before I moved. And I remember the same comment that you made about Greece from one of your fellow Latvians, and the different attitude towards the debt and not paying. I think it was really a bit the usual confusion that people normally make, understandably, about the political initiative of a country and their own people. So it's something that is a generalization that has to be allowed to a certain point. Those lazy Greeks. But
no, it's not about that. It's just different mentality. So there's nothing wrong about the Greeks. It's just a different way. So because they were in debt, they said, well, there's no way we can pay that debt, so we will just declare ourselves bankrupt. But the Latvians, they were like, okay, we have commitments, so we have to stick with them. Not very successfully, but there is nothing wrong with either way. So it's just a different mentality, I guess.
Different. I guess, yeah. I guess you're right. It's quite, sometimes it's just depends what a part of history might, sometimes it's just is the initiative of some politicians that of course come from the electorate. But at the end of the day, the real people have also very little participation in these decisions, despite their attitude is different. The people that are like suffering because of the crisis, they don't really have any say about what the Greek banks or whatever the situation was in Greece in those days. At least that's my opinion.
No, but it's just Greece. It was, it's a long discussion, I guess. So it's probably a different conversation. What was the right approach? Or
you are right somehow, because there are clearly cultural differences between Greece and Latvia. And there is a different way also to deal with reality that is related to history and everything. Also, when you say suck it up, I totally understand what you're saying. I just sometimes I feel like these generalizations are dividing us. And sometimes on a European scale, on the way that we look at each other, they just pay a favor to people that are trying to divide us with these things. But I admit maybe my approach is also a bit naive with that, maybe. So
no, I totally get your point. Well, the biggest problem with that is that both countries were in huge, massive debt. So, and that's the inexperience of in both ways with the dealing with the credit and what to do with it, and when the time comes.
Two countries of European Union exactly in a very similar situation. And then we have some major decisions that have been taken in two different countries. And then we have people in a bar in Latvia or even in Greece bad-mouthing the Latvian population or vice versa. So at the end of the day, it's a war between poor people at the end of the day, whereas people on top, they get to do whatever they want to do. But at the bottom, we get to criticize each other, and that's the best situation for them. Like at the end of the day, I would say. But
anyway. Divide and rule, as Machiavelli said.
Exactly so. There you go. Let's go back to Latvia. Studying at the University of Latvia, I understand what were you studying exactly?
History.
Of course.
Well, I started just as everyone else with the interest in modern history, First, Second World Wars, etc. But then it just accidentally happened that I got interested in medieval history, which I didn't know pretty much anything about it before. And the more I learned medieval history, the more I liked, and that goes hand in hand with the church history. So that's where I particularly got interested in. I didn't specialize in it. I went for culture, heritage preservation, and restoration. So that was my specialty. But my private interest was in the history of church, medieval, especially early medieval times, church fathers. So I listened many courses in philosophy as well, because you had to listen courses from another departments, which is mandatory, and the faculty of philosophy happened to be in the same building, so that was very convenient and interesting as well. So that was great. It was like an eye opener. So it was it went hand in hand with my own religious journey, because my ex-wife, she was devoted Catholic. I was a Protestant. So the more I learned about church history, the more I started to like Catholic Church, because all this mysticism and mysteria and secrets and Holy Spirit, it was because of Protestant church. Well, as you know, because of Reformation, it's very rational. So all the safe mystical elements are taken out violently, which I agree, but it's very tempting, the mystery of Catholic Church. And so funny, before we got married, we were going to preparation course, and so the priest, he was a previous medieval history student, and so exactly the same thing happened with him, that he fell in love with medieval history, and the more he studied medieval history, he quit his studies and he went to the seminar and became priest. So when I brought that subject with my professor, Miss Hans, and he said, yes, all my brightest students, they become priests. And that's literally what he said. The best students in medieval history, they become priests. He said, there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, no, the more you learn, yeah, so you realize if you move on with the study, so at some point you are tempted to become priest yourself. Yeah, so yeah, it kind of sucks you in. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. At some point I was considering uh not becoming a monk because, well, I was married, so I couldn't, or the priest, so I couldn't become. But yeah, I was playing with the idea.
I'm tempted to digress for a second because of what you said regarding Catholics and Lutherans. So I got a question that always bugged me from my very fragmented approach in knowledge. I don't know too much. I was raised like a Catholic, but I don't have it's not enough. I just to go to catechism but in my life, I kind of probably lived among people that are they belong to a Catholic tradition, or at least raised like Catholics back in Italy. In England, London, I wouldn't even say if I met people, probably Anglican church, whatever. I haven't really paid attention to the difference. But when I moved to Latvia, I probably got to know people that probably they come from a Lutheran tradition. So probably the first time that I started paying attention to it, despite in Latvia, you got Catholic, Lutheran, Orthodox. I was wondering if despite the advent of Soviet Union that kind of marginalized the church probably for half a century or something like that, despite that, is there any connection between the introvert approach of, for example, Latvians and a tradition with Lutheran church?
Well, it's again, you have to look at history. So, well, the Catholic Church. So in Latvia, it's a very unique situation where you get the fairly similar proportions. You get Lutherans, Catholics, and the Eastern Orthodox. So all those three religions, they coexist, and they coexist very, very well. Like many people from Western Europe, the Catholics, they are so surprised when they go on pilgrimage to Agluana.
Of course.
Yeah. So, and they are like shocked. Oh, the Lutheran churches, they allow us to stay overnight. They welcome us. And sometimes there was a joke that the main Lutheran bishop, he was, the people were joking in church that he was more Catholic than a Catholic cardinal in Latvia. So, yeah, so they coexist very well. And they on a very good terms. So Catholic Church was brought in by, well, essentially the Crusaders and everything, but that's a heritage from the Polish state. So because Latvia for long periods of time, it was part of Poland, especially Latgale. And then Lutheran Church is after Reformation. So the German nobles, they accepted Lutheranism. So that's the, so essentially the peasants as well, they converted to Lutheranism. And yeah, Orthodox Church, that's the Russian influence. So mainly the Russians are Orthodox. And so, but yeah, I would probably agree that Lutheranism suits Latvian introvert souls better than Catholic Church.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say the Catholicism is predominant in the eastern part of Latvia, and people from there, they have that Polish heritage and influence, so you would see them more outgoing, and the way they live, so they live together in villages. That's their natural way of life. In western part of Latvia, whereas Kurzem, you don't see villages naturally. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, it kind of follows mentality.
Is there anything that, in your opinion, is connected to the different liturgies? So the different, like for example, earlier you were talking about Catholics with their mysteries, right? And Lutheran not in the same with the same scenario. So do you think that those two types of what do you call them? Let's call them beliefs. Allow me, beliefs or like traditions. Let's call them tradition. Those two different kinds of tradition, because of their essence, because of their mysteries on one side, and their rituals of the Catholics, for example, and on the other side, the rituals that are different from the Protestant and Lutherans. Yeah. On the other side, do you think that they contribute ultimately to our behavior?
Perhaps. Yeah, so the Lutheran Church is very, very rational. And was that Max Weber, the German sociologist in the late 19th century? He wrote about Protestant working ethics. So, and so being poor or being in debt is considered a disgrace in Lutheran tradition. So if in Catholic Church you can reach salvation with your belief, in Lutheran Church, well, the works. So yeah, it's very rational and very cold-hearted. So that's why many Lutherans they lack in that mystic experience in the church. So the Lutheran Church is very rationalized.
It's very difficult to compete with the Catholic Church in the sense that there seems to be more, probably because of how the Protestant Church is, probably because of the same reason why it was born, with the same reason why the Protestant happened as a rebellion to the traditional creed.
It was the first heresy a
Yes.
Catholic Church couldn't oppress.
They probably. Yes, exactly. As you say, it's the first heresy that the Catholic Church also couldn't stop. So almost it has to be more democratic by nature.
Yeah.
But
so there was a Reformation and Counter-Reformation, and the wars in Germany, they were so bloody. When the Habsburg dukes, they went on a rampage in northern Germany. It was very violent, because the religious wars, they are the most violent wars, because when you go in religious war, you don't have any breaks, because you're killing in the name of a right God. So there is no contempt for your position, so you don't take any prisoners. Yeah, so those wars, they were very, very full of blood. And
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Like especially the previous heresies in Catholic Church, the Arians, Albigens, and whatnot. So they were oppressed, especially in southern France. It was a massacre. So, and the Catholic Church was extremely brutal in oppression. So that's what religion and devotion does to the people. Yeah. Yes. So
you have been around the world a bit. You've seen different countries. You've seen, for example, I know you got a special relationship with North Africa, particularly Morocco, I understand. So you've seen different cultures. You've been traveling around. You spent time in England, and then I presume you've been to other places. When you talking about religion, when you come back to Latvia, and you know the background of how Soviet time kind of influence on the relationship between religious people and their creed, right? I presume that it wasn't allowed very much to actually profess your own religion during Soviet time. Am I right?
You are totally right. Yeah. So the church, the church was, how to say, as a way of resistance. So it was celebrating Christmas on the 24th of December, the Christmas Eve. So that instead of 6th of January, so that was a way of showing your quiet protest. So I remember as a kid, my great grandma, before I went to sleep, she was coming to me and secretly teaching me Our Father in Heaven. So and because so she had to do it, like she was teaching me and saying not to tell anyone at school that I taught you this. So as well, I remember when I was, that's a bit off topic, you just mentioned my great grandma. When I was coming back from first year, I started to go to school in Soviet Union. So my first class was in Soviet Union. So I was coming back home and telling stories how great Lenin was and what a champion he is. I remember she was saying me, don't believe that, it's all lies, he was evil. And she said, she remember her saying, I'm very, very old, but there is one thing I want you to remember. There used to be a free Latvia. Never, ever, ever forget about it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that same with the church. So it was as a way of resistance. And I remember from the stories of my mom. So my godfather, happens to be a priest, and it was very difficult. So they were spied on, and church was full of KGB spies, so you could never trust. But yeah, that the
Yeah.
church survived as a way of resistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the picture that you're painting is the fact that clearly there is a nostalgic feeling of that, what you call, guys in Latvia, I would say, mieri laiki or mieros laikos. So the time of the first independence and 1918, 1940. And that inevitably that was associated with the church. Inevitably, we can say that. So, but I got a question for you. I'm really interested in the answer. There's no rhetorics. I honestly don't know. So when you come back to Latvia and you see it in the aftermath, because it's been like 30 years, I guess, since the collapse of Soviet Union. Those 50 years have neutralized almost the religious component of a nation, almost, not totally, but they kind of affected negatively to the point where it doesn't seem to be around anymore. The churches you don't get to see a lot of people in the churches or whatever. Do you think that is necessarily a bad thing in Latvia nowadays?
Yeah, well, the decline in churchgoers and the church influence, well, it's not just, I wouldn't say it's just Latvia, it's all Western Europe where the church is in decline. I think you have to take a broader look at it. So, because as Spengler wrote about the civilizations, they have cycles where they are born, where they grow, expand, where the peak of the power, and then they start decline. And they declining and they fall in decadency and then they die. Look at the Egyptian, Sumerians, Greeks, Romans. So, and all these civilizations, they follow that cycle. So, and so I would say the Western culture is in decline. So, and it's reaching its logical end. So, and if you look at Islam, Islam is exactly at the point where Christianity was 600 years ago. So, if you look at Christianity 600 years ago, what was happening? Crusades, expansion, killing the heretics. The church was at the peak of its powers, and kings were desperate to be crowned by a pope in Rome. So that was the peak of the Catholic Church, and that's where the Islam is now. So I would say, yeah, the decline of religion goes hand in hand with decline with our culture. And so, well, you might argue that because of the Enlightenment, so we have reduced the need for a god in our society, and we are like scientific society, so we explain things with the science, not beliefs. But yeah, those, I think they are interconnected. So I wouldn't say it's just Latvia. You have to put it in context of our Western civilization and culture.
I like the fact that you predicted my argument and you gave me the chance to move the strand to make another one. Yes, I could have argued with the fact that enlightenment and maybe positivism and science justifying being the new religion might be maybe a way to contrast or for society to survive in a new era. But I don't think that is enough. Probably in this situation, we're probably similar. I don't think science is enough for us to actually survive in the future. I think we will always need some sort of spiritualism in life. I think it's part of us. I think it's the part of what we are.
We are religious animals. That's what we are.
Like we established at the beginning of the podcast that we are social animals. Now we also established that we are religious animals. The shape and form of which this religion is professed can change concurrently with the big trust that is being given to science. At the same time, is the fact that I think there is a slow trend that is going towards individual, allow me, creeds or beliefs. More and more, we cannot be within one church or two or three or four. we are getting towards a bespoke spiritualism. And I don't know where this is bringing us. Okay, I'm giving you a couple of examples, like a philosophy of life, like Taoism, Yin Yang. Everybody's got his own, or like things that are connected to art that might be so exciting that they give you a reason to live. For example, being creative enough in life. If you feel creative, it can represent some sort of religion. Why? Because it allows you to live in a positive way.
It's interesting you mentioned Taoism and Eastern religions, because that made me think, well, the Abrahamic religions, so Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they load you with a big sense of guilt. That's the free will. You are born and you are a sinner, so all your life you spend. So it doesn't give you harmony, it just give you a big sense of guilt. So, and you spend your life trying to make up for your sins and trying to reach salvation. So that's why the Eastern religions, they are more like way of life. If you look at the Buddhism, Buddha was never considered a god. He was just a teacher. So, and it's more about harmony and reaching harmony in your life and spending your life in harmony. But those Abrahamic religions, well, they were born out of necessity, like having a single god, just for the Jewish to be able to survive. That was the differentiation factor back in the days. So that survived them, allowed them to survive as a group. But at the same time, that the Abrahamic religions, they load you with lots of guilt, and you spend your life trying to pay back for your sins. Yeah, so
some of the religions, like Abrahamic, or I hope I spell it right, or even like Islam or Christianity or things like that, they go hand to hand with nationalism sometimes. So they become so built in with drama in it and struggle. They almost work like a flag sometimes. They put us all together in some sort of justification to survive and things like that. Whereas those philosophies of life, like Taoism or Buddhism, they seem to be more like celebrating life instead of overcoming drama. Sometimes I got some sort of fear that the consumerism of the era that we live in and the technology and everything makes me think that we're going to create some sort of tradable good, like it's going to become like a feature in our social media.
I'm not so sure, because I think the religion is being marginalized even more and more in our society. And a modern day temple is on Regent Street, whereas the Apple flag store, that's the new temple of the day. So where you see worshippers queuing for days when a new iPhone is released, so they are there. So if you see that Apple flag store, you will see that's literally like a temple where they go worship their gods.
Is there any relief in the fact that technology with the internet has brought the possibility for people to actually receive an education without going through traditional institutions? The church in Italy has always represented what, like in Mozart, allow me with a very posh reference, the symbolism of the Zauberflöte. I don't remember
the magic flute.
Magic flute. The queen, or the queen of the night, always been the Catholic, in the sense that it seems to. In order to prevail in society, it used to be very exclusive. So every time that the society will try and lift up their chin and try to actually slowly with the middle class and everything, the church would always react in a way that it was always tending to establish the status quo. So sometimes the religion, a country that has a very strong religious component, seems to happen when there is a poor level of education. Now, I know there is a big statement. Most of the time that a religion is quite strong in a country, it doesn't seem to be something that you achieve after you have emancipated yourself through maybe academic studies or information. It seems to prevail every time that there is a very simple division in class. So yes, we do live in an era where in Regent Street we have the new temples of technology and everything, but there seems to be more freedom in these hubs where they symbolize the fact that we can open this laptop and all of a sudden we don't have to be privileged to access information and culture and everything. The country where religion seems to be successful, they seem to be a bit preposterous for the time that we're living in terms of ideas and everything. Do I sound really bad when I say that?
No, not at all. I think Umberto Eco. Do you like Umberto Eco?
I do.
Yeah, so he wrote a very interesting one of the essays. He was saying that, well, the biggest tragedy for Italy was that it never experienced Reformation or Counter-Reformation. So Enlightenment, nothing of that happened in Italy. So he was saying that was the greatest tragedy, like for Italy and Spain, because that Protestantic values, they never got chance to establish themselves in particular case in Italy. So that was he was saying. So yeah, so even in France, which remained predominantly Catholic, so they still had the Huguenots and they had that experience and a bit of tradition. So yeah, that's according to Umberto Eco. So that's why, and and the church, well, because it never got defeated, so it never had opposition. So the society stayed a lot more traditional rather than in Northwest Europe. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, and it's totally convalidating what I'm saying. Now, clearly, anything that is better than that past that Umberto Eco is defining in Italy comes from Jacobin values from the French Revolution. So we owe it to our neighbors. If we have a secular state that is kind of separating himself always more from the church. So I totally understand what Umberto Eco wants to say. It seems that even if we do need spirituality in our life, in our existence, as is part of us, right? We do need that. But every time that we look around in the map or the atlas, and we see there is a strong religious component in a country, we have to deal with phenomena such as homophobia, or you name it, or maybe some, for example, emancipation of women. I'm just putting them all together. I'm making a big soup, okay? But it can't be ignored. It's like that. So I think maybe the way that we need to start concentrating on is the fact that there has to be a way to be spiritual in life and at the same time not be rednecks. You see what I'm saying? Think about it, an Islamic country.
My wife would have a lot to say about it. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's incredible what a freedom internet and phone has given to those people, and it's interesting in Morocco. Like whenever I'm going to Morocco, I can see Latvia in the 90s. Many situations, things that happening are the same that used to happen. So people are queuing outside internet cafes and getting Wi-Fi signal, and so it's it really opens your horizons. But unfortunately, technology itself doesn't give you the education or freedom because it's just a vehicle. So it can bring you good, and well, let's be honest, most of the time it's being spent on TikTok and Snapchat, and not searching for University of Harvard. And so so it goes both ways. So
you're right. If you don't know what to look for, if you don't have the desire of what to look for, internet is a big trash can. Absolutely, I agree with you. But at the same time,
you see, it's not internet that matters the most. What matters is education.
Education, yes.
So yeah, because internet itself, it's neither good or evil. It's just how you use it. So, and educated person, you see that the educated person, it will go to the library and gain the information needs, even without internet, just as we used to do when we grew up. So the educated person will get the most of internet, and person without a good education, it will end up with the trash on the internet. So education is what matters the most.
I see what you're saying with education, and I agree somewhat. But the thing is, there is a new ingredient that it wasn't there for a while, which is the availability of information being there and accessible through something that is probably in the pocket of every person in that country, whatever country we're talking about. Okay, so yes, it has to do with education, yes, but at the same time, this initiative of looking at the neighboring country, like for example, I'll give you a little example. Look how sexy and attractive has been rap in the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah,
It's been conquering like the heart of many youngsters and teenagers. In Latvia is very appreciated, the same in Italy or whatever. So all of a sudden you have something that it wasn't around in your country or my country or wherever, or come from the States, and it has that power of being enticing, like any musical genre, so you can identify yourself with it, and somehow you get to know about the way that another country live, because rap used to manifest all the problems with the society that used to be ghettoized and everything like that, right? So it's a little example to say that there are ways in which this,
as you said, used to. I think modern day rap music has nothing to do with its roots anymore. So
no, it's just an example to say we could be talking about anything else that resisted till today. And you might have a point about rap. I think you do have a point about rap that used to be this powerful, but there could be also another example. So what am I saying? There is a gray territory between a lack of education that might not be there, which is very important, and on the other side, the availability of internet as accessing information. There is a territory in between where people are exposed to different reality, different from your country. That's what I'm saying. Now, clearly, education would be good in order to make the best out of these notions, whether it's rap or is comics or anything. But we are in a situation that before the internet wasn't there. I remember, I'm going to tell you one thing, like when we are millennials, both of us. So before the internet was available, whatever, I had to go and live with an encyclopedia every time that I was curious about something. I had to have my brother to reach the book. There were like 3 or 4 photos available, not more than those or whatever. I had an education, I'll give you that. So I'll give you also that. But what I'm saying now we are in a situation where, yes, there is TikTok. There are all these low quality ways to spend your time, but sometimes we shouldn't underestimate the content of these funny medias that are around, because somehow they might have the power to broaden a new teenager of these days view more than the way that our teenagers were enticed by. You see what I'm saying? So there is a lot of trash, but at the same time, there is a mean that has never been there before, that we didn't experience in the way that they're experiencing right now.
Yeah, there is that ability. The question is how much that ability is being used.
Yes.
So that's rather questionable, I'm afraid.
Yes, and I agree with you somewhat. But what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to work with a half full glass.
It has that potential. I agree. It has that potential. On the other hand, I think it leads to oversaturation. People are being oversaturated with the information, and information becomes like a trash food. You eat it, you forget about it. So when you had to reach that encyclopedia, you had to look at those 3 pics. You had to actually read that text. It probably stayed in your memory forever. I would probably argue that what you learn from the books, you remember a lot better than what you came across on the internet.
Yes, but also one thing that me and you, good point, Kristiāns, but one thing that me and you, we don't know is that because we are not animals of this, that were born into this time. So yes, the way that we get to remember something has to do also with looking for it, waiting for it. Absolutely, I understand that. But at the same time, with the benefit of the doubt, we were not born in this era. So maybe human beings being adaptable or whatever, they will establish their priorities between the internet and the internet. Whereas we have to establish our priorities or our ways to approach the system between the fact that we had to reach that encyclopedia and that we have the internet on the other hand. Here we're talking about people that have availability on one side and on the other side, and not necessarily has to resolve in laziness of the, or like lack of initiative. You see, we know these people. These people are made for a different, like almost like Blade Runner. Like just, we are not. We are, me and you. We have one foot in the era of the internet and one foot in the era without the internet. So it's kind of understandable that we know what boredom is. For example, we remember what boredom used to be. And now they don't, because as soon as they get bored. They have that. But also, are we not failing in understand that maybe these new human beings are programmed differently than us, and maybe they have a, or it's just me trying to be too positive? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like your positivity. I don't. Yet again, it's you see, the internet and phones is just a vehicle. It's just a vessel. It's up to us to fill it with a meaning and a content. So itself, it's neither good or bad. It's just the way we use it. So it's and the way you use it, to be able to use it in a good way, you need education. So of course it allows you to access information faster. Is it necessarily better? I'm not sure.
Well, how can it be bad?
You can any time look up the scientific article, or you can connect with the people from the other side of the world and get the quotes and whatnot. Yeah, of course it speeds up the process instead of going to library. But on the other hand, that speeds up your life so very much, because if you were asked to do 2 projects a year, now they're asking you to do 5 projects a year because of that speed and accessibility. So
yeah, but don't you think that I understand? But don't you think that maybe, but we don't have the term of comparison to tell how this presence in society has to deal only with quality search or no quality search. We cannot compare the mean that they have today, even with the lack of education and a phone in their hand, with what we've been through, because we just comparing 2 different realities with a lot of common sense. I'll give you that, because if I open Google and I want to waste some time watching trash, I can spend all day doing that. But that's me coming from a different world. You see what I'm saying? It's just a, anyway, well, interesting.
yeah, I don't think we'll reach the agreement on this.
No, I think we need to, at some point, we need to put some beer in the conversation somewhere. And just,
yeah, that wouldn't be bad.
It would be nice. But anyway, let me ask you before we move towards the end. Unfortunately, so you studied history, and now in England there's a possibility to start teaching history, right? Tell me more.
It is indeed. I wish I've done it rather sooner than later. Since I reached a certain age, well, I work in hospitality, so I work in restaurants. So being a teacher always been back of my mind. Unfortunately, how it works in Britain, when you work as a waiter, you earn considerable more amount of money rather than teacher, especially when you start your teaching career. But finally, I decided to take that step, and yeah, luckily, because I do have a degree in history already, so I have to do just 1 year in university to become a qualified teacher. So it's a step I decided to take finally, and yeah, I'm looking for classroom experience right now, and that brings me to subject about the British universities, because they are essentially a big money machine. That's what they are. So they are all in private hands, and um, it's very sad here in Britain, because yeah, the main thing they want is your money, and um, the student loans, they are ridiculous here, and most people, they will never ever pay back their student loans in their lives. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it seems promising, and rather than that, doing just 1 year, so it's great, instead of doing 3 years, and that would count towards my master's degree as well, and I don't know, maybe I could do my part in education. We had a long discussion about education, how important it is. So I would do my bit, because I clearly, you know what's lacking? They don't teach the kids how to think critically. The critical thinking is lacking, and that in history, critical thinking is so important. So I'm hoping to do my bit to maybe change someone's life, and you know.
And you also have there are the features. Oh, I hope you didn't get it in the wrong way. It's supposed to be a compliment. The features of do you remember, like when we were younger? Maybe we, like personally, I had a teacher I looked up to,
Yeah.
and there used to be maybe five that were like, "Bleh." Like maybe there was one that used to actually inspire me for many things, and I don't even remember it wasn't even about the subject that the person taught. It was about the approach and everything. And talking to you, I get it feels like you the way that you talk, the way that you are open-minded about something, and you critical at the same time, but at the same time you don't make something hostile. Um, and it makes me think about the features of a teacher that is supposed to um, enhance critical thinking. Like you probably was destiny that you have to. It's part of the way that you are, I guess, of your character.
Well, it's you see, these days, many people can't tell the difference between discussion and argument. So even if we disagree, so I often think that disagreement is a lot more interesting rather than agreeing on everything. So
I agree.
yeah. So
But
yeah.
yeah. No, but you know why? I was talking about this the other day, I think, in another podcast. I don't know. I think it's because it has to be given, credit has to be given to them, maybe because of education, definitely, that they haven't tasted the flavor of disagreeing and how curious. So how interesting is a conversation when you actually disagree and you try to um, debate about something. And somehow, if you reach a point, and I don't call myself a debater, I still have to learn how to do it better, probably. But what I'm saying is the fact that if you get to taste how nice it is and how entertaining it is and how interesting it is, you probably would put in the second position, or the drama out of it and the argument and all the negativity that comes with it is secondary to how entertaining it is. But some people haven't, because of probably what you said, the education. Some people haven't experienced it, so everything that has to be debate is associated with the argument and I'm wrong, you're right, or stuff like that.
Yeah, well, in a debating, you never lose respect to your opponent, so you never become personal. So it's discussing ideas, not people.
Exactly. And
Sense.
also it has to also come from a presupposition that I am not my ideas. So it is part of being a human being to be irritated and to pride and everything, and it's still there, and I think it should be there. But some people are missing the fun of it, right?
Yes. It's important to remember that no idea is worth killing for or worth dying for, because at the end of the day, it's just an idea. So,
yeah. And it doesn't mean that we don't believe in our ideas. It just means that there is no harm in comedy. Like there is this attitude for comedy that is very straightforward and experimental, like American comedy. That is maybe, attacking taboos or things that we're not supposed to laugh about. We also have to come out of this idea that comedy somehow shouldn't laugh about certain things.
Interesting you said it.
Yes, yeah.
The Umberto Eco's In the Name of Rose, I'm not sure if you read it.
Yes, I have.
It was all about Aristotle's second book of poetry, which is about comedy.
Yes.
And that's why it was deemed the most dangerous book in that monastery, which was never supposed to get outside the monastery. So because as the old monk said, if you start laughing about God, that's the end of the church and the church power. So because if Aristotle would teach people how to laugh about religion, they would lose their power.
Absolutely. And we need to get some countries in Europe more acquainted with the idea of laughing at things that we're not supposed to laugh at, because it doesn't mean that we don't respect those things. Sometimes we feel, oh, you're laughing about something, so it means that you don't have any respect for it. No, you can be both. You can respect something and also laugh at it. It's part of the system. We need to get into that point, and I think it's important.
So it's when you start laughing about certain things, you remember Charlie Hebdo? What happened there?
Yeah, so, I do remember. And guess what? The country that killed Charlie Hebdo is is quite religious. I'm not surprised.
What was the book? No, I can't remember the book's name. That was that controversial French writer. He wrote a book where France became an Islamic state. It was a very controversial reading, but very interesting. If only I could remember the name of the book. Yeah,
I remember. If I'm correct, I don't know, but the whole thing about Charlie Hebdo is the fact that the satire of that French, what is it? I don't know how to call it, magazine. I don't know. Magazine was using satire to criticize Islam. I understand, right? A lot.
Yeah.
Right. Now, there is, I don't have to say anything else. It's just the fact that we can understand the way that the Islamic State feels about something like that, but that means that that kind of differentiated look, diverse look to society is not part of that Islamic State. So we're trying to get the book of whatever the Aristotle comedy book. We are in the aftermath in some countries, especially in the States, with that. They're quite good with comedy, being like that. We're trying to use that book to emancipate ourselves. And some countries that are very deep and very soaked in religion, they can't do that yet. Yeah. So it seems that spirituality that we were talking about at the beginning seems to be our cross. It seems to make a lot of dead people around, a lot of...
Remember what I told you earlier, that Islam is where the Christianity was 600 years ago. So it's very totalitarian and very straightforward and very oppressive, if that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So you just need to look back to Christianity, how it was 600 years ago. So
yeah, absolutely. It's the way it is. It's undeniable that it's the way that it is. Now, clearly, things cannot change overnight, but I kind of trust the fact that internet will play a big role in uniting us more. against call them preposterous ways of seeing spirituality or things like that. Because also some of the religions that we're talking about, they are deeply interconnected with politics and nationalism and the Islam State. There you go, I said it. So I think it's time to unfortunately end this beautiful conversation. I have to.
Allow me to disagree with that internet is going to help us, because, as I said, it's just a vehicle, and it helps. Just as it spreads information, it spreads disinformation. So if the education can spread so easily, then Islamic State or radical messages spread as easily as a good message. So because
Absolutely.
internet is just a vehicle. So
you got the last word. I grant you that, and sometimes I just don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not saying that now, but I love your hope. I wish I would be as positive as you are, because sometimes I see myself as a bit too pessimistic. But I love your positivism towards that things can be better.
There is a future that we were not born in, me and you, and maybe he's got worse or better surprises, but even worse. Who knows? Anyway, thank you, my friend Kristiāns, for the lovely chat. We have a friend in common, Alberto, that we say hi to, and probably we've been.
Ciao, Alberto.
Ciao, Alberto. We know that you are in the bath, in a hot bath, with a glass of probably a single malt. But
thank you so much for having me. It was great to see you again. It was great talking to you again.